And just as I was saying to Gary, maybe having a badge that a professional like a hydrologist or a landscape architect um, could display against their qualification would uh, would help SUDS approving bodies here in Wales to realise, this isn't just a design that somebody's cooked up. This is something that that a registered professional, a trained professional has come up with, and therefore maybe we can give them the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. I don't know. Has
Yeah, but
anybody had experience of getting a SUDS design through a SUDS approving body that, that could maybe tell me whether I'm barking up the wrong tree or not?
I'll oh, I forgot my camera's not on. Sorry. Um, we have, but then I suppose with Land Studio we have civil engineers in house, so we do kind of have that advantage. I would call it an advantage. But yeah.
Yeah. So how does the SUDS approving body, the SAB, know that you have got the hydrologists and engineers involved in the SUDS design plan when you submit it?
Um, that's a good question.
I guess they must have some criteria that they check off on.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure actually. Just give me a second because I'm just going to check something. I don't think, yeah.
To me, it makes a lot of sense to try to make this a multidisciplinary approach and to bring welcome in and bring in these other disciplines, not just because they're going to understand things from a different perspective from us, but because that will teach them what we can do. And I think working together as a team is the best way to educate outside of our profession, which we really need to do.
Yeah, the former training officer in me is starting to think, 3-day course, we could have workshops in this and we could help the drainage engineers and the hydrologists uh, to help the landscape architects come to terms with all the flow rate calculations. And the landscape architects could help these poor befuddled drainage engineers to realize, hey guys, it's not just pipes
Yeah.
and water flows
But
downhill.
But yeah, and also just embracing those engineers who are already with the program because we definitely have some. I've worked with a lot of engineers over here that are not old school like that. So making sure that they get the recognition that they deserve for already being kind of with the program, if you will.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm thinking about uh, an old engineer that I know who is an absolute advocate for SUDS. And I think he'd be, he'd be rooting for this multidisciplinary approach. There would be some interesting discussions about the detailed design and sheet flows versus perforated curbs. But I think the workshop would just be much more fun as a result of that. Now, it's like Kate has put a note in the chat. Um, yes,
Yeah.
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 So, Kate, could you comment on that?
Yeah, well, that so you know, again, open to interpretation, I would say, because unless there is small print, but I'm pretty sure that there isn't. I'm going to just double check one of our forms that we did recently. Um, the suitably qualified is a fairly sort of open term, isn't it? And I suppose it's up to just the individual to judge whether they're experienced in those things, drainage, flood risk management. Of course, the implication is that you're sort of leaning towards a drainage engineer because of the type of work that they would tend to do. Um, I suppose it's it is sort of that debate, isn't it, about um, who should be leading on it, not so much that the engineers shouldn't be involved at all. Because I think, like Claudia said, I think, and you said too, there's strengths. We all have strengths to play to.
Absolutely. And engineers that they're totally not phased by some of the calculations that make
Right.
my head spin.
Yeah,
Um, and as I say, I'm hoping that landscape architects can bring that innate understanding of landform
yeah,
and can really help the rest of the professions to understand that with a few tweaks you can actually do a lot more with less and save money on a whole load of things to do, not just with drainage, but at the same time generate somewhere which people are going to be genuinely delighted to live and or work in. So I suppose my next question to the floor is, how does a developer or a landowner realize that your landscape architecture or drainage engineering practice is suitably qualified to put forward that SUDS design to the SUDS approving body, that they're just going to go, looks good, and rubber stamp it?
Know the answer to that. Um, uh, just, we can pick back up on that, but I do want to say that I think that a critical aspect of this is trying to get clients and developers to understand how much money they will save by doing due diligence and feasibility of a site and analysis of a site before they start drawing buildings. I think tying it to the financial aspect is really important to getting them on board. And that's not just suds, that's everything. But I think drainage can be a major hurdle for a site. So it's a good way to kind of get your foot in the door of helping them to understand that we need to be there first to help make sure that this is actually going to work. Because if you don't pay attention to the site, if you just come up with these beautiful buildings that are plopped down wherever the view is best, wherever the least trees are blocking the view of the building, typically. Sorry, if there's any architects on the call, I don't mean to insult you. It's just that it's a bit frustrating when it doesn't seem like the site has been considered very well. And I think that is a way for developers and clients to really save a lot of money.
Yeah, and I know, well, Ian Tillotson has said this in more than one venue, that when he was the SUDS approving body representative in Cardiff City, developers would come along and they'd try and pull one over him, and he'd go, "Look, you get this sorted, otherwise I'm not going to let you build, and if you do build, I'm going to tear it down." And SUDS approving bodies have that power in Wales. And I'm not sure that professionals who've been trained elsewhere in the United Kingdom really understand the extent of influence that SUDS approving bodies have. So again, how do we get that across to clients that your practices have got that ability to save them that kind of money, from the word go, to save them that kind of jeopardy?
Wonder if the next step is to sort of try to arrange for a further conversation about sort of this multidisciplinary workshop idea. Or if anybody has been on this call and feels that that's something that they'd like to kind of look into further, then Pete, you're running the show, so you tell me what you think is best. But um, if there's a way to sort of figure out what our next steps are, I think.
I think that sounds like a really good idea, that we get together some kind of a meeting, whether it's in person or on Zoom, uh, or another video conferencing app of your choice, um, to to talk things through and then look at what might the end result be for the professions? Um, how could we lever the most out of that, and then how could we deliver whatever the product might be? I'm thinking a workshop leading to some kind of professional accreditation, but there are plenty of other ways to do things, and I'm open to all suggestions. But I'd be happy to facilitate that conversation if you thought that would be helpful. And I can do that on the public dime until around the end of March. After that, I'll be out in the private sector, uh, and we'll have to discuss things.
That sounds great from our perspective, Pete. Thank you. Um, anything that we can from a LI or you know, general perspective, just let us know, and we'll have a chat about it.
Fantastic. Oh, I see a comment in the chat from Justin,
Yeah.
the ecologist for Cardiff. Um, right, Justin, do you want to unmute yourself and and make your point? Be great to bring you into the conversation. It's assuming Zoom will let you unmute yourself. Right. Okay, I can see you're unmuted now, Justin, um, but I can't hear you.
Why don't I just read what he wrote?
Uh,
He said, raising my head above the parapet, what myself and the tree officer are noting with SUDS is that the highly engineered soils are impacting significantly native biodiversity, i.e. unable to reuse native soils, being so large they chip away at retained biodiversity, which is still the way developments go, even when pushing back very hard.
hmm. that's that's really really interesting
It's really
because
interesting.
yeah, from an engineering perspective, a SUDS is a sustainable drainage system, so it has to function to convey water, to allow for evapotranspiration to store it if necessary, and then hopefully to discharge it to the environment in a quantity and quality that will hopefully enhance the natural hydrology. And I know for when you're designing a rain garden, then the permeability of the soil. Look at any guide to rain gardening, and they all say do a perk test, do a percolation test, and then design the rain garden to drain down within a certain length of time after it's saturated. So soil permeability is a big thing in such design. But I mean, Claudia, you've been wrestling with this for decades.
I
How do
have,
you get
and
across this tension?
well, first of all, in a former life, because of my environmental health background, I actually did septic system design, and for that we did not do perk tests. We did soil tests where we dug down with an auger about 4 feet to see what the strata was, and based on the colors of the soil and the texture of the soil, we were able to determine what the water table was. And I think that same approach should be used for SUDS, because permeability, percolation is not well tested by just pouring water on it and seeing what happens. That can fluctuate with different times of year, different climates. All sorts of things can affect how fast the water percolates through the soil. So the only way to see that is to look at it from a kind of a more scientific approach of actually looking at the colors and the texture of the soil. That's it. And that is something that requires some training, but it's not particularly difficult. It's not rocket science. It's just basically you have a little book and you look at it and you determine the soil. So I think that is the first step in determining the what soils to use. But in most cases, I would suggest that the native soils are preferable If it is a heavy soil, like a clay soil, you can mix other soils in with it to try to lighten it and make it drain better. But that doesn't mean you remove it. To me, that seems counterproductive. So I think that Justin's point is really, really important, actually. And given the biodiversity decline, that is counterproductive to what we're trying to do. In order, to just make it so that it drains well, that might as well just use a pipe if that's what you're going to do. Honestly, it doesn't make any sense. Um, so let's see what else we have here. Many of the trees we could use, which are native, would struggle with the extremes, especially with climate change. Yeah, I mean, the thing about a suds feature is it's not just wet, it's also dry. And in large parts of the year, and then particularly in parts of the country like around London, where you have a drought every summer nearly, um, you go through periods where it needs to, so the plants need to be able to adjust to those fluctuating conditions, and the soil needs to be able to adjust to those fluctuating conditions. So you're not putting in pond plants, you're putting in things that can take everything, and so very durable plants actually. And the soil. I mean, this point about the soil has just kind of made me have a little bit of a light bulb moment because it's so important. The soil is so important to how these things function. So a substantial part of whatever workshop we come up with needs to really dive into that,
Mm.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at my background here, Grangetown Sustainable Drainage Scheme, the soils are incredibly carefully designed because there's a pipe which runs beneath those rain gardens, combined rain gardens and tree pits, into a final stage filtration unit before it goes into the River Taff. So there, it had to be incredibly precise as to how that system dealt with the water, so it wouldn't flood back into the houses, and so that it would deliver clean water into the Taff. Um, but I know that in most places that's not the case. There is a bit more leeway, and the opportunity for infiltration, I think perhaps is underestimated. And maybe we're getting a situation where engineers are going, I need this particular maximum flow rate out of this system. And the only way for me to be able to demonstrate that mathematically is if I remove all of the native soil and bung in a mix which I have tested this permeability. So definitely our workshop needs to talk around those points.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to come down to establishing a level of trust in the fact that these systems will work, and you can't always have the numbers justified to the decimal point. There's going to be a range of success, and that range of success is based on all sorts of things, not just the soil texture, but also the maintenance of it, and
Yeah.
the levels of storms that come in. There's all sorts of things that can't be controlled.
Mhm.
So this is, I think letting go of some of that need to control every aspect of it and just allowing the natural process to do what it does
Yeah.
has to be part of this.
Amen to that. And we've just hit 11 o'clock, and I promised I'd end the webinar at that point. So I just want to say a huge thanks to you, Claudia, for,
Or
yeah,
thank you
for your,
everybody for coming. Really appreciate it.
that's great. And thanks to Kate for co-sponsoring this webinar with the Landscape Institute Wales branch. Thank you so much. And Kate, Claudia, uh, Justin, everyone, let's keep in touch and let's see if we can take this on to the next level and try and work out some kind of professional accreditation for sustainable drainage practitioners here in Wales. Thanks again,
Brilliant.
everybody.
Thank you,
Great.
Pete.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Take it. Bye.